welcome to episode 6 of the Collegiate Esports experience. We've got some fun stuff coming at you guys today. New mics,
yep. Shout out to Welty for bringing them back to us. A student had borrowed them.
Yeah.
And
we've got it all figured out now. We've got the broadcasting and the podcasting all figured out. And speaking of broadcasting, I think that's going to be kind of our topic for today.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of progress, and we've had a lot of fun over, over the last 8 weeks, but primarily maybe like the last 3 or 4 here at Regents Esports.
Absolutely.
Tanner, I'll go ahead and turn it to you to, briefly explain what you've been doing in broadcasting, and then we'll get into a fun conversation on that.
It's exciting me because I'm getting chills thinking about it. But
yeah.
I have put so much energy into Regents Esports broadcasting. Actually, did you see my post on LinkedIn today?
I did not. Walk us through it.
So I just did a brief stats post on LinkedIn to keep some of our trustees and alumni and some of the older generation that doesn't necessarily understand esports. They use LinkedIn like it's Facebook. So I usually post general esports updates on there. And I put out data today, our analytics, our social media, Twitter specifically, in the last 91 days has made over 30,000 impressions, which might not sound like a whole lot for like big schools and larger accounts, but for a program like our size, we have 1,200 students. So on average, I'm getting like 311 impressions a day.
Okay. I think building off of that too, and there's a distinction to make there, that 30,000 impressions to me is significant because somebody who's on Twitter, we'll use Twitter in this case, might
X.
say, or X. Well, I'm always going to call it Twitter. If you've used Twitter before, especially if you're subscribed to Twitter Blue, if you're using it for yourself, 30,000 impressions might not seem like a lot. As an example, when I've tweeted, I've responded to some sport posts and things like that, and I've gotten upwards of 50 to 60,000 impressions on one.
Yeah.
So you might see that and be like, oh, well, 30,000 isn't a lot. The reason 30,000 is a decent amount of impressions for a Twitter like yours, at least the Regents Esports program Twitter, is because that isn't a Twitter account that's going and trying to farm impressions.
Yes,
you're not posting under threads for other people to see.
Right.
Those impressions are much more organic than, say, me commenting to be at the top of a thread that's been commented on 1,000 other people.
Yeah. And Twitter makes that distinction when you're reviewing analytics. They have
correct
organic impressions, and then I forgot what the other term was, but organic impressions is something that they highlight. And then on top of that, our Twitch streams have grown. I couldn't even give you a number. I think I quoted you like 200%.
Which is way under.
It's way under. It's probably more close to the 500, 600, maybe even 700% in there. I mean, I think I streamed last semester, and I was doing this part-time last semester, like very part-time, maybe 3 times. I think I streamed. Yeah. I did an all-day live stream for a charity event, and then I streamed a few other times, but not nearly as much as we have. We've streamed 25, almost 26 hours in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
So granted, some of those siege games have gone a little.
Yeah, that's fair. We kind of padded those numbers with that one siege game against Nebraska, but
yeah, but still, I mean, in the last 2 weeks, we've upped. I've gotten 91 new followers. I think we're at like 2,700 comments and chats, and then 17,000 minutes. I say that already. 17,000 minutes watched, which equates to like 284 hours, something like that. Don't quote my math. Not good. But still, overall, we've made significant and wildly upward improvement in our social media and broadcasting. And a lot of that's come with some investment, obviously. I mean, the camera, the lights, what you guys don't see behind the cameras, the monitor, the lights, the computer, the streaming equipment, and then a lot of personal time just trying to figure out, Clay's helped me out too, just trying to figure out Twitch. And streaming in itself, because it's sure, I mean, you press that live button and it's a lot easier, but not only am I running a stream, I'm doing the production, I'm doing social media, I'm running the league itself for that section. Right. Like running the game, I have to keep up on the rules. Each match has their own rules, and the streamers have to follow, so it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think one important thing to consider when we're, right now we're really just kind of giving a background of our last couple of weeks, but we've seen a lot of success and largely due in part to the work that you've done and things like that. But it came with plenty of trials, right? I mean,
every day.
Just what I'm thinking of here is because in case somebody's listening to this in their program and we're talking about this and they, take this conversation as maybe a little bit of motivation to start doing things on a more consistent basis at their program. We've seen success, but we've switched around our broadcasting setup how many times now at this point? In the last 4 weeks for even just this podcast alone.
I mean, if you go back and watch every podcast, we're in a different position, in a different setup. This is, I think, the setup that we're going to stick with for a while until maybe I move into a different recording space.
Right.
Maybe. It's a big ask, but it definitely comes with trial and error. It's not something that we've been like, oh, this is easy, and then we've picked up on it and we've done every single week. Literally every week that I've been putting effort into broadcasting and streaming, something's changed.
And this is obviously a biased opinion because we're talking about our own program right here, but something has gotten better each time. And to me, I think that that's all that matters because there's so many programs out there who are probably like us and they're just really getting their footing underneath of them in terms of broadcasting, content creation, right? Maybe some of these programs have been around for 2-3 years, if not longer than us, and they just haven't had the bandwidth or the resources to start doing this. And when they start doing this, it's easy to look ahead or to look at other people's broadcasts and say, holy cow, that's perfect. Look at how great that looks.
St. Clair, for example, if you watch theirs, it's like a professional. I mean, they're small, not small. They're a community college up in Toronto, I believe. Mm-hmm. And their broadcasts are phenomenal.
Right.
But they also have all the resources. They put a lot of energy into it. So, I mean, like you're saying, like a program like ours, or if your program's just starting out, and I think the little key takeaway is just to do it. Just go for it. Make those small strides.
And it's important to consider that at one point, almost all of those broadcasts and programs and content were terrible, right? To me, when you're investing this time, it can't be investing it hoping that one day it's all going to be perfect and work out and go viral or, you're going to get tons and tons of views. I think consistency and incremental progress in terms of content creation, both as a university program and any of us that are out there maybe looking to create content on our own, right? Say one of us wanted to stream or, on our free time, right? It's nowadays we see stuff go viral or we see these places have these large platforms and we think it's going to be like this night and day, like it just clicks. And that's not how it is. And I mean, we are certainly exhibit A, right? And not to mention you can put a lot of work, like there will be a week where you've put in tons of work and you expect there to be, 100 viewers in your Twitch stream, right? Or for this tweet to get so many. However, it might not get that, but did you have a 5% increase? Yeah. Did you have a 6% increase?
I'm happy with a 1 or 2%,
Right.
As long as I had a tweet on Monday or Tuesday last week that got like 11,000 impressions out of nowhere. Not sure why it did so well, but it did. And then yesterday I put out a tweet and it's got like 175. Yeah. So I mean, you also can't just base your whole day on those numbers. Because like you said, you're not going to get those numbers every day. They will steadily fluctuate up and down, but as long as you're aiming to make that improvement, I think that's where your program will ultimately be better off.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And with kind of furthering this discussion, what would you say, has been a tough challenge for you in let's start back at the very beginning. Let's say you haven't broadcasted at all. Mm-hmm. Well, you did last semester, but at this start of this semester, from when you sat down and said, okay, I need to make broadcasting a priority, what has been something that's been a difficulty that has not hindered, maybe hindered your progress, or you're like, oh, this is the difficult part right here, right?
I guess kind of just working out all the technical kinks. Because, like we use Streamlabs, OBS, and I know it's not everybody's preferred platform, but it's what I prefer. I think you use it pretty frequently too. Yeah. And, they make it pretty easy, but there's so many things that you didn't think of. Like we were using a little 1080p camera to record our first broadcasts, even our first podcast. And I was like, it's great. It does what it needs to do.
Right.
But if I really want to up my production, I have to get a new camera. So then I have to learn how to wire up a camera, wire it to the equipment, and then stream it live. And then it seems like every time I boot up this camera, I have to redo the process and learn again. And then
we almost had issues this Wednesday streaming for Valorant and Ace. We almost were like, oh, we guess we don't have a camera for the broadcast tonight.
And then the mics. And then yesterday, I made the decision to go out and get face cams for the players, and I did that It took me almost all day to set up. I got it figured out. But like these little things that like just to make your broadcast one step higher,
yeah,
it's a challenge. But I mean, it's if you're willing to put in the effort and time to learn, then you've got it.
And with this like content creation, whether again it's individual or for like your program here, you could look at, let's take your example right here with you bought 5 cameras, well 6 cameras actually to
5.
put out.
I had an extra one.
You had the extra one, okay. And the thought of like the time that it's going to take to do that, which seems like a very simple task, right? Setting up 6 cameras. You think it's plug with how good technology is, right? But the fact of the matter is it gets quite time consuming to run it through the software, which you can get into that here in a second, I think, because it's an interesting discussion on how you specifically did that. But it seems like a lot of work. But the thing is now that you're done with it, think about the upside, the value add of that to your production now.
Yeah.
I mean, we now have live cameras of each player.
Yeah.
As well as one that shows kind of the team.
Yeah.
So in that moment when they win a round or something like that, I mean, that was something that we've been missing for the last 4 weeks. We're always talking about it on our broadcast. We're like, we wish you guys could hear these guys and see these guys.
See these guys out in the lab, and now that we figured out how to do it,
next week you can. Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely been a challenge, and I thought it was going to be more of like a plug and play thing, like you said.
Right.
But it was. I had to go out and buy the cameras, and Best Buy. I don't think you guys watch these podcasts, but we have a good partner. That was a great bidding on Clay's behalf there when he was the esports coordinator.
I did something good.
They've set us up big with a discount, so Best Buy, if you're watching, all love, I appreciate it. But we go out there and we bought cameras. That took like an hour, half an hour. And then I had to come back, wire them all up, plug them all in, and then watch a video, a 10 to 20 minute video on how to use the software through Streamlabs, and then go through each PC, do the software. Luckily, it's not that difficult. It's called Collab Cam, and it uses its own server through Streamlabs, and you send a link out.
So it's directly compatible through Streamlabs then?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. So It wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be, but each player gets a link. They click on that link. They allow the camera access to their...
You have to do this before every game? Okay. Yeah. So, which isn't that big of a deal. I'm just more for my own.
No, it'll take like 10, 15 minutes per game to set up, but that's nothing if I can get the player reaction. So now as our content's getting more and more seen, I mean, we went from 70 views on a stream to now we're reaching into 300, 400 views, which I guess is also a sign of our success in production. I wouldn't call it success, but a sign of our growth.
Yeah.
And now we have families watching their students play, and now they get to actually see them play. Last night, the Siege team was the first team that we ran the trial on, and Siege is so mentally focused. Like, these guys are like staring at their screen, and they're hardcore focusing in, and it's fun to watch them. It's fun to watch them communicate. You can see the team captain yelling down the row, the computers, like, "Hey, let's focus up. Let's do this. Let's do this." Obviously, we can't hear them still, but that's a challenge I could tackle later on. I also don't know if I really want to show or let them hear the comms, because that kind of gives away our game plan a little bit.
Well, I don't.
It's a give and take. That's a whole other topic.
There's not a lot. Are there a lot of broadcasts that show player audio? I'm just thinking of specifically like when I watched LCS, like say Worlds and things like that. And
I don't think so.
I haven't watched a lot recently, so maybe it's changed, but I don't recall these player cams having a lot of audio or any audio, period.
Now, there's an option in that collab cam to have the mic active on the camera, but
which is probably terrible anyways.
Yeah, it's not a great mic. And then also, sometimes players say some wild things, or, some swear words come out. So
everybody does. If you say you don't, you're lying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just in the gamer nature. But so it's just better off to have the camera rolling and letting people see the face.
Yeah. Now, is that camera ran through that computer, and then it's just through the software they log in, and it sends it to this computer?
It's just on its own network.
Okay.
So it is a little laggy. It's not great. There's some skipping in the footage, but it's not live. Like, I'm not watching them play live constantly, especially with as much bandwidth as we're pulling for a regular game. I think that contributes to some of the lag, but it's not bad. Like, it'll do. I'm sure there's ways to improve it, and I'm sure there's ways to get more high quality video footage. But that's just one of those things. Like I said, you got to take the time to research and figure it out, and I'll get there. But
yeah, I think it's really interesting to see, and I'm very fortunate to be able to see this kind of growth, like just in general. And I think that this is something that hopefully, interests people who are maybe in the spot that we were in last year or a couple years ago, or even 4 or 5 weeks ago, where we were like, we want to start emphasizing broadcasting, but we're at square one.
Yeah,
right.
I think a big benefit too is the school admin here really wanted to see a focus on broadcasting. So they've kind of given me the green light to kind of do whatever I need to do. And if you're in a position, if your program's in a position like, hey, what's our next step for esports? Broadcasting should be considered, because it's more than, and I shot this out on our stream, but it's more than just an opportunity to go live and showcase your players. It's a recruiting opportunity. I use it for recruiting. Our scholarships are available for mainly athletes, but if someone came to me and was like, hey, Tanner, I really like your streaming, I want to help you out with broadcasting, is there a possibility I could get a scholarship for that? Absolutely. So
and you know me, I've always said from the start, part of my pitch of bringing Collegiate Esports here to Rockford and just having Collegiate Esports be a thing in general is that it's not just competition.
Yeah.
It's content creation, it's marketing, it's learning, it's event management, it's leadership, it's all these different things. And in emphasizing and prioritizing broadcasting in your program, you're opening up, especially for these smaller schools where at larger schools, 1 or 2 people joining the program might not seem like a huge deal, but at a smaller school like us, when you get a commit or you get 1 or 2 people to commit to the program, it feels great, and that's huge, right? In terms of its percentage of your overall enrollment. Like 1 person to our university is a lot more significant than 1 person to a university of 50,000 people.
Right.
And so if we're able to pull in some students based off of, even if you had a student come in right now and they saw this, right? Admittedly, we're still growing, right?
Yeah.
And you'll keep growing. But I think this right here, this is intriguing for a student who might be interested in esports, both from a playing perspective as well as, we've seen esports as a curriculum coming up. We at NACE met many people who are professors of esports, and
shout out to NACE.
Yeah.
I know you guys watch. I see some of it.
And a lot of schools are picking up on this and building that in their curriculum. And I just think it's another way to tie in student enrollment.
Absolutely. And it's also just a good way to get engaged. And it's something else that as a school has to consider is esports, our demographics aren't just Illinois local. Like if we look at where our stuff is being seen, we played a school in New Jersey on Tuesday, and we had viewers from the Mississippi River Valley all the way to the East Coast and everywhere in between. And they were watching it. So we had hundreds of viewers from across the United States watching our stream live. And that's also a branding and marketing tool for your university. So if your institution is a little stuck on the fence, maybe they don't want to commit, there's really no reason not to.
Show them this podcast. We'll talk to them for you.
Yeah, give us a call. But if you can market it as more than just you getting on a camera and showing players playing a game, you can market it as an opportunity to expand your reach, get your name out into a less familiar area. I know Rockford University is really trying to focus on our central market here, obviously in Rockford. But if we can get connections out east, out west, in the south, in the north, whatever, it's beneficial for us.
Yeah, and that's just what was part of my pitch, a long time ago to bring this here was from a recruiting standpoint, having it here as a facility.
Yeah.
Even if you're not somebody who let's think about when I was 18, right? And I was looking at schools to go to. I was the furthest thing from a competitive video gamer. I played video games all the time, but I knew I stunk, right?
Me.
However, if I would have walked, Rockford University, obviously I'm an alum, so I fell in love with the school for other reasons. But had I walked in here and walked by this facility that we're fortunate to have enough now, that's a value add for me as a student as well. If you said, hey, Saturdays you can come in here and play and stream, and that's a draw for me. So if there are people out there whose school hasn't quite jumped on it yet, or they're on the fence about bringing Collegiate Esports to their campus, I would highly encourage it for all the reasons that we know typically, right? But as well as, it doesn't have to be just for your esport athletes, it's for your students. It's a facility, and it's an offering that your school can have that is still catching on and growing.
We're seeing a little bit more protection, I guess, for esports facilities across college campuses. I know like MSU, I was talking to some people from Michigan State in a Discord, and they're saying that their lab is actually private. So, but I don't like that. And sorry, MSU, no hate. I just want, like, it is, admissions here at RU has made it a point to make the Regents Esports lab a tour stop. Granted, we're in the heart of campus, but at the same time, they see the investment in it. And when students walk by, I mean, I'm oftentimes like, whoa, that's cool. I had a tour group of high schoolers yesterday come through, and they were so in awe that this program, one, exists, and two, that I said, hey, yeah, come on in, come check it out. Like, can we sit in the chairs? Like, yeah, sit in the chairs. If you want to log on a computer, I don't want to take all your time, obviously, but it was a huge draw, and students were excited about it, and, you know, I love it.
Yeah, I think having a public space is incredibly important. Obviously, at the disposal of your resources, right? If you have the feasibility to do extra, I think having a separate facility is great. I would highly advocate for that, but the fact of the matter is that's not necessarily a feasible reality for most schools, right?
Mm-hmm. It's an expensive investment, but
right.
It's worth it.
I think, and I haven't been able to tour a lot of other places, but we did tour one college in particular when we were looking to invest in ours, and theirs was pretty similar to ours, except they were able to close it off, and there were hours where it was specific, and I think that's kind of how we operate.
Yeah.
Of course, I think it would be awesome to have dedicated sections for competition, for your players during match time and stuff, but the fact of the matter is there's a high upfront cost for starting something like this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that here starting it in the first place. I couldn't imagine, opening another room with, 8 other computers or something like that.
We've been fortunate enough to have a program or a school that supports our program pretty well from the get-go. I mean, you did a great job selling it, and then Alex and I have not to toot our own horns, but have done a pretty decent job continuing it. I mean, we've got all new machines, computers, monitors, chairs, you name it. We've gotten it, but that's also come at high investment toll.
Right.
We've put a lot of time into it. But then again, at the same time, we don't need to make that investment every year. There's other sports programs that need to buy new equipment every single year.
The upkeep is rather inexpensive.
Yes.
There are variable costs for if your program grows and gets bigger, then obviously you're expanding and there's more that can go wrong. But that was also a talking point, was I said, in starting the program, yes, this is a pretty daunting amount of money to throw down here. And I might sneeze at some point, so my apologies. I don't know if I can mute this mic.
I don't think so.
I think the sneeze is going away. But it was, I'm saying, yes, it's a daunting number. But there's very limited travel, at least right now, especially with where, we ended up having the pandemic and all that stuff. That only made it less and less travel. But once you make that, you're good for probably a couple years.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, with what we have out here now, you might not even have to replace all those computers whole, right? It just maybe here's a new graphics card, here's a new whatever, right? Yeah. So it's smaller investments after that, and there's not as much upkeep as traditional programs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just also about instilling in I instill in my captains, the team captains, like, hey, this is a recruiting space for one. 2, it's your team space. You gotta look after it and take care of it for your team. My phone just fell. For your program, but then also it's overall a shared space that the program can use, can promote. So I really instilled to them that this is their space as much as it's not really mine, as much as it's the school's. So let's take care of it, And they've done a really good job. But they don't eat in here. They don't.
That's a good way to put it. Well, think about it. You get paid to be here.
Yeah.
They pay basically, their tuition goes to this place. So it's like, hey man, this is more your space than it is mine.
Yeah. So right? I really try to hone that in on them, and it's working. I'm not seeing nearly as like when it was unmonitored. That first year we had a really rough time.
I had a rough time.
We're located, just for reference, right next to our secondary option. I shouldn't say secondary, but another eating option on campus called The Den, and it's like a fast food to go sort of thing, and students see this open spot with nice comfy chairs and desks, and I get it, they want to come eat in here, but like it's us chasing them out, basically.
It was really bad a couple of years ago because I was a grad student, right? And so I'd be walking, you're familiar with campus layout, and I'd be walking back from the business building, and I'd pass through here on the way back to the dorm, and I'd walk by, and I'd be like, guys, look at all the tables out here. Why are you sitting next to my, expensive computers with 3 drinks and greasy fries? Come on.
Yeah. But that's a whole other thing. It's really just a big investment initial investment on your school's end, and then it'll pay off. I mean, let's say you invest $150,000 into a program and a facility and a space, and then all you gotta do is bring in a few students, and it kind of theoretically covers your cost. You know, we have 22 students playing. As you do the math.
That's the first time I've heard that. I have yet at this point not asked you how many we have officially.
We have 22 students playing and 3 different teams. And, they are in turn, like you said earlier, they're paying for the program. But I think just their activity and their willingness to be a part of the program shows to the school that that's enough.
Right. I want to kind of build off that and switch. We're switching topics a little bit here, but I wanted to get your thoughts on what has went well. You know that I am a big supporter of like team culture, right? That's just like what I teach partially and things like that. But we've seen a lot of growth in terms of team culture.
Oh my gosh.
And just team dynamics moving in a positive direction since week 1. So for
100%.
Clarification, at the time of recording this, we're at week 3 of NACE Star League competition, as well as Midwest R6 and things like that. So we're entering about the third or fourth week of competition, and many of our teams are newer.
Yeah.
There were some returning students, but there are also new students. There are students who hadn't played before, or who played and now joined the team. And week 1 was a little rough, right? Not rough in a bad way, but in the same way that you would expect for any team, right? I played sports growing up. Every single time you threw me on a new team, it was awkward, right? And we saw that. But I've been incredibly amazed at how some of these kids have really built a culture and grown into a team in just 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, so for reference, out of those 22 students, I shouldn't say kids, students that are playing, I said 6, but it's 8. 8 are actually returners. So we have a majority of new players here. A lot of them are freshmen. We've had a lot of players graduate, move on. Last year, I think, was the 4th year of the program.
Sounds about right.
So the ones that founded the program played all the way through and then graduated. And then we also added a new program, a new team, Valorant. So Valorant in itself is new. That's a whole new culture. But these teams, we've had a rough, rocky road, but it's getting better. You as a leadership man know the team stages of development, the forming, storming, norming, and performing. Yeah. We lingered in storming for a little bit for a lot of these programs, but it's not a bad place to be. You know that. It's normal for the teams to do that. They get together, they get that high energy, they're excited to play, and then they lose, right? Or practices they go until midnight or whatever. There's these challenges that these teams are going to face and that we have faced. But in my role as a director or a coach or whatever, officially, I'm seen as, but is to sit these students down and break it down to them like, hey, you guys can't expect to be playing at the top of your game. You guys are all good players. But you can't be coming in expecting like you're going to win every single game because it's just not.
It's not solo queue.
Yeah, it's not solo queue. It's not a solo game. All these games that we're playing are team focused games. So you guys are going to have to spend the time. Last week or 2 weeks ago, the Valorant team was having a little struggles. I called them all in and I said, hey, what do you guys do outside of practice? Like when you're not in the lab, what are you guys doing? We're in our dorm rooms. We're doing this. We're just separated. You guys have a group chat. You have Discord. Say, hey, I'm playing pool in the den right now. Anybody want to come out? Yeah. Or, hey, I'm eating dinner at 5. Let's go have a meal. Get away from that team aspect of strictly being a team in the lab. Yeah. And be a team outside of the lab. Be a team. Go hang out. You have to learn how to play with or be with each other before you play with each other. So for these students, it was a challenge, but we have seen that their teamwork. I mean, we talked about it on stream last week. Valorant week 1 was bad. their cohesion was not there.
Rightfully so. I mean, it's again
yes, it's not their
understandable.
fault. Again, it's not their fault. But this last week, it was like a whole new team. Like if you played week 1 team and week 3 team together, that would have been night and day. So,
and I think that culture is such an important thing. I'm thinking of Valorant because it's what I've been involved with the most of all the programs, but that culture is what keeps you afloat in those 3, 4, 5 round swings where you're down 3, 4, 5 rounds in a row, right? Mm-hmm. That culture is what kind of keeps you afloat and picks you back up. And we saw that because in weeks 2 and 3, we had a couple of those slides, but then they came back and they forced overtime or they won a half or whatever, right? Week 1, when you start to get on that slide, that was one of our biggest things was when it rains, it kind of pours.
Yeah, and they stayed down there.
Yeah,
they did not get back.
And they were very intentional. They were very aware of that.
Yeah,
you know, I think it was one of our players specifically who was like, guys, you got to keep talking, right? Like just because we lost 2 rounds doesn't mean we stop talking. And I think the stronger your culture gets, the easier it is to keep that conversation going and keep moving forward after a tough round.
Yeah, I'm like, the credit all goes to them. They're the ones that are putting in the work. I'm just like I keep telling them, I'm just the guy that helps run your program. So I'm giving the credit all to the Regents players because they have been putting in the work, and I see it. And, you know, like I said, they're not winning every single game. But as DeMario, a friend of the program, said, it's win or learn, and these guys are definitely learning to play together, winning aside. So
yeah, we've talked about that on the stream and our broadcast. We said, you know, when things get tough, there's 2 options. You either you keep let it beating you down as a team, or you say we're gonna keep working.
Maybe
something's gonna go in our favor.
Yeah, Siege last night had a little bit of a problem where they kept ego swinging Platteville. And I was like, and the casters were back here in the booth, like, stop swinging. And eventually, by the 4th time they did it, they learned, like, maybe we shouldn't swing.
Yeah.
And you can see that click there in the team. And we switch over to the player cams, and you can see Rudy, the captain, like, don't swing. It was kind of funny, but they're learning to play together, and they're communicating well. I actually had a football coach in here yesterday, and he's like, Tanner, what's going on? And I gave him the breakdown and kind of explained what we're doing and how,
he was asking
like how the program's doing. Like,
oh, okay.
overall.
I thought he was like asking what this is all for.
Well, I did show him this.
Okay.
But and I said, you know, it's just getting the team to play together is the biggest challenge. You know, I can have each and every single one of the players play, but getting them to play together is the challenge. So, you know, I think he took some notes and went back.
Yeah, and we talked about this like week 1 where I told you, I was like, dude, I firmly believe that like a team of plat players with a strong culture, strong communication beats teams of diamond players who aren't cohesive.
Yeah, that solo queue mindset.
You know, and that's what's so interesting to me is because a lot of these places, and I mean, it could be successful, but a lot of these places think, you know, let me recruit the highest ranked kids. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have a team of all Immortals or all Radiants, right? Great. But I'm not shying away from that kid that's plat and a leader of my team or a person who is a great representation of my program. I'm going way off topic here and going down a tangent, but you know, there's so much value in a kid who says, I'm in it for the team instead of, you know, and how they handle adversity.
In my recruitment talks, when I talk with students, I have this little presentation I go through, and in there, skill is not one of my bullet points that I'm looking for in students. Yep. I'm looking for dedication, communication, teamwork, somebody that's willing to learn, someone that's willing to receive criticism, give criticism, constructive criticism, that is. But
sure.
Overall, like, skill is not listed. If you're bronze and you come to me and say, hey, Tanner, I really want to play, I will try my hardest to get you on a roster to let you play, especially if you're dedicated to the program, you're willing to learn, you're willing to listen. And then, as Jeremy, one of our players, said, rank means nothing. It's your teamwork that means everything. So,
well, we've seen that. I'm truly amazed, and I hope that this is the case for other programs as well. We have a couple kids who, as you just mentioned, they're new, whether that's new to esports in general, but like they just started playing Valorant, which is not an easy game to play, right? In the same way that League isn't. That's why I'm still terrible at it after 10 years. No. But they just picked this game up. But due to the team atmosphere and culture and consistently working together, watching film, practicing, whatever, everything included that they're doing. Some of these kids are,
they're insane.
Are tapping heads at levels significantly higher than like platinum play. I mean, it was, the other day we had 2 of our players in the Valorant game where I was like, weren't these kids just starting to play like 3 weeks ago?
Yeah,
I mean, it's unbelievable. And so when you're able to put your athletes and your students in a position to have that environment and that culture, that's where they grow. And so,
yeah, I'm all about fostering a good program. I said this a few times, whether on stream or on the podcast, I could care less about winning. It's more about the player experience for me.
Yep.
So I'm curious to kind of know your goals and expectations as we move further. Granted, I mean, you're a part of our program as a faculty advisor, but getting that outside feedback.
What are you referring to? Are you referring
just
to,
like
to teams or like broadcasting?
Anything like any helpful tips, advice that other programs might be looking for that you can feed towards me that other teams or other programs can adapt off of?
I want to see us primarily, but I think this is something that programs could utilize. I want to see programs and us again specifically bring your students into the broadcast. And I think you've done a great job of that. And it wasn't initially something that I admittedly had thought much about or really attributed much worth to. And you were like, I'm doing player interviews after the games. And I think that's so interesting and so beneficial because it connects the students to the broadcast. It connects them to representing their school. It's more for the people who are watching, whether that's their family, people who are just on the internet wanting to watch some collegiate gameplay, or high schoolers looking to see what the spotlighting collegiate esports looks like. So you're doing it more now with the cameras and stuff during gameplay. I think that's a great building point for broadcasting.
Yeah.
I love seeing that again because I think it also gives a little bit of ownership to players.
Yeah.
Right. When they see themselves as a representation of a team and of the program.
Yeah. Win or lose, I have somebody coming in here telling me what they thought.
Yeah. And I, from a faculty perspective, I think that's important for them. I'm always leaping at the opportunity to help students build their public speaking, how they market themselves, how they network.
Listening and answering questions.
Yes.
A big thing.
Both in good times and in bad times. And so I think involving students with the broadcast in whatever means is great and something that I hope we continue to do and that other schools do because I think there's a lot of room for growth there and benefit. From a team perspective, we've had a handful of teams doing really well. We've had a couple of teams that are struggling a little bit record-wise, but I've seen probably the most growth out of our Valorant team who their record doesn't reflect
their skill
well on their effort.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and so I want to see that team start winning games and not in like you should have won more games, but I want them to be able to feel the win as a result of all of their efforts on culture and the hard work they're doing. And I have no doubt they'll get it.
I think next week, the way that we've been playing, it was super close against Fair State this week. And I think next week they'll get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's that. And I'll talk about our podcast as well. I think,
there's goals here too.
I just want to keep doing this every week. I've made it a point to, and I think we've done pretty well in these Friday recordings, and I've slacked a little bit in getting these podcasts out on time, but the consistency of doing one of these a week or around there, and we've seen a lot of growth, and I think at times we also see where you might not get as much views or as many views as you would expected, but I think pushing through that and kind of really doubling down on what we have here, I'm really excited to see where it goes, and quite frankly, even if we get 0 views for the rest of our lives, I don't care. I enjoy doing this. This is a highlight of my week.
I think somebody somewhere they have to be in the same boat that we are in or have been in. And these simple conversations, whether we're talking with like a guest like Michael Brooks or somebody like Dirk, somebody just who has influence and experience in the sphere of things, but also just having a conversation like we're having right now where we kind of tackle the simple things and allow programs to work through ideas with us. So
yeah, and I think there's a lot of power in kind of these unscripted conversations. We sat down, about 35 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago, with essentially 0 plan. We said we want to talk about our broadcasting growth and some trials and tribulations we've had, and just letting that conversation go. I think there's room for that anywhere, but especially in Collegiate Esports, where we really have no idea where we're going. Not in like an unprepared way, but we just know how much is ahead of us, like how much potential.
There's so much potential.
And we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Because of the exponential growth that's happening. So that's my unscripted goals and thoughts there.
I think that puts us in a good spot there to kind of wrap it up as we move to make a shorter episode this week. But, we're just trying to keep things light and, like you said, be a resource for programs. And
100%. Well, as always, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on episode 6 of Collegiate Esports Experience. We hope the microphones... Is it 6?
I think so.
We argued about this before the episode. We were like, it's 4. No, it's 5. And then we had to go look back.
I think it's 6.
But keep working hard. Keep investing in your programs and your students. And we will see you next week for episode 7.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Peace.
Peace and love.